And we're live. Thank you for coming back for yet another episode. And if you judge by the title, it's another Dragon Award nominee. But first, the introduction. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. The podcast where Doc puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we are going to introduce the topic, which is the Dragon Award. It is a fan-voted...
a little bit, just for
What's
the record.
that?
You're projecting a little bit, just for the record.
That's just what we do. You know, it's called style and pizzazz. You wouldn't know anything about that.
I have more pizzazz in my big toe.
Maybe. But the Dragon Awards are fan-voted award that recognizes outstanding achievement in science fiction and fantasy literature, comics, gaming, and filmed entertainment, which are given out annually at the Dragon Convention in Atlanta, Georgia. The award has been going strong since 2016, and it is a of fans, by fans, for fans award, so anybody can vote. No memberships required, no fees, just an email address. There are currently 15 categories up for consideration. Some of them more important than others. Doc, all 15, go. You're on the spot.
Okay, fine. I can do this. Best science fiction novel, best fantasy, including paranormal, because fantasy is the best. Best young adult and / middle grade novel, best military science fiction or fantasy novel, another wonderful category. Best alternate history novel, best media tie-in novel, best horror novel, best comic book, best graphic novel, because they are different, despite what JR, the illiterate, thinks. Science fiction or fantasy TV series, best science fiction or fantasy movie, best science fiction or fantasy PC / console game. So that would include like My Wonderful Switch. JR doesn't game, so he doesn't count on this one. Best science fiction or fantasy mobile game, best science fiction or fantasy board game. Dragon Flamecraft, that's the best board game. Best science fiction or fantasy miniatures collectible card or role-playing game. CJR, I even was able to annotate the list for you.
Hey, Doc, I used to be a gamer until I took an arrow to the knee.
JR, your pathetic mating skills are not role-playing games.
Oh, dang it. Now they tell me, Jeff, your parents are counselors. You were supposed to warn me about this stuff. All right. Some friend he was. All right. So, Terry, can you introduce yourself to the audience? You are obviously one of the nominees. And if they're looking at the screen, they can see that you wrote with Jeff, J, and Chaney, but they might not know who you are.
Hi. I'm Terry Maggert. I had written for a few years before Jeff and I sort of came into each other's orbits. We were brought together by a mutual friend. I had written 12 or 15 novels and some short pieces, and I've been with Variant Publications now for 4.5 years. And things are obviously going incredibly well. I'm originally from Florida, and I currently live near Nashville. And thus far, this has absolutely been the best year that I've had in 9 years as a published author.
That is a good thing that it's your best year. So who introduced you? Faust? Was it Faust that introduced you?
Jeff and I got a mutual friend of ours named Jen Long, who's a dental hygienist from Sisters, Oregon, actually read Jeff's books, liked him, loved his books, read mine, said, you kind of write like him. And a phone call later, I'll let Jeff tell the rest of it, but it was a real brief sort of process. But Jen Long is the catalyst for this entire partnership.
Cool. Well, shout out to Jen, because this is an awesome story. All right, Jeff, not to be outdone, can you introduce yourself to our listening and viewing audience?
Yeah, my name's Chaney. I've been writing now professionally for about 8 years. Published in 2014, the same year I got out of the Air Force. And, I've been writing since I was 15. Went to school for it, joined the Air Force, got a master's in it, and then finally, decided to stop slacking off and actually pursue it professionally. started Variant Publications a few years later. Started recruiting other writers to work with, mostly because people wanted more content in the shared universe I was building. And now, of course, most of what we do is outside of that. We barely ever put out any new Renegade Star stuff, although we do have one series coming out soon. Terry and I met, I think he was the first co-writer I brought on. I actually went looking for talented, underappreciated authors who, were really good, but just hadn't had that break yet. And so I contacted a few readers of mine who I knew read, basically like a book a day. And Jennifer Long was one of those people. And she sent me 4 names. I went and I looked all of them up, and I read the first few chapters of each of their books. One person had only written 1 book. Terry had written several. And I liked Terry's writing the best. It seemed the most compatible with my own. And I reached out to him and said I wanted to try working on a project together under a pen name at the time. So we started working on that together. We had some success with it. Eventually, I brought him over to work on the Messenger series, and we've been working together ever since.
Which I love the Messenger series, just for the record. And my son last summer went to camp with somebody who his mom went and bought him like the first 4 or 5 because it was the first time she'd ever heard of a character having the same name as her son. And her son was like, I don't like my name. It's weird. Loved it. Total switch in the kid's mindset. Even though he was a little young for reading the books, he absolutely loved it because his name was cool now.
Oh, that's cool.
So, Jeff, I'm going to put you on the spot, all right? Do you have a favorite Terry?
A favorite Terry?
There are several, and you work with a couple.
I do. I do work with a couple. I will say, yes, I do have a favorite Terry named Terry McGinnis. You guys know who Terry McGinnis is?
No,
but it should be Maggert. Just saying.
No. See, I can't pick a writer because that would be playing favorites. So I'm going to say Terry McGinnis, who those from my generation and background will recognize as Batman from Batman Beyond.
Oh, yes. I forgot that was his last name.
Yeah.
I did love Batman Beyond. It's a great one. I wish they do more with that character.
Oh, same here. And my second favorite Terry would probably be Terry from my first series, the Variant Saga, the main character.
Poor Maggert. He didn't make the cut.
Oh, he didn't make the cut. He didn't make the cut. But I can't say openly like who my favorite is out of the people I know personally, because that would be playing favorites, and I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings.
Okay.
Mixon's definitely nicer than me. He's a pleasant guy. He's a peach to be around. I'll say that.
You're a peach to be around, so I don't go dissing yourself either, dear.
I was just talking to Chris Kennedy today because we had a book come out today, Fangs Out, which is the 3rd in the Uplink Squadron series. And I was talking to him about Terry, and I said, Terry could, he's got the charisma. He could pull off being a game show host.
He could. he very much could.
And the only reason I think that is because the only reason I think that's because I was recently watching this YouTuber with my wife, and they go back and watch old game shows that only lasted like a season or whatever. They make fun of them, and the host for that show, they interviewed him, and I mean, he's the spitting image of Terry. It's crazy.
You're gonna have to send us that link off record.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we were both, because my wife and I, we love Terry, and we often talk about how he has like this bright smile. He lights up a room, Yeah. Definitely game show host material right there.
It is very hard not to smile at Terry, and he uses it to his advantage. It's very adorable.
Yeah.
If you just said that I light up a room, that means, according to what I know about serial killers, I'm good. I'm as good as dead.
This is true. So, But you could be my favorite too, Maggert, if you just killed me a few times in literature. I want to be the Joe Buckley of my generation. All right, Doc. Before I go too far afield, next question is yours.
Don't worry, you've earned your reason to be killed, JR. So
I hope so.
Obviously, we're talking about the 2022 nominee list. So we weren't able to get all of the nominees, but we got some of the best, and definitely Terry and Chaney count as that. Can you introduce yourselves a bit to our listeners? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I totally spaced out. I was busy making fun of JR. And let's talk about the Backyard Chip, the title you're nominated for, since you guys did introduce yourselves. I'm sorry. Have I said I haven't gotten a lot of sleep this week?
You have.
Because it's true.
So before they introduce it, can I play the commercial they were kind enough to make for us?
Oh, that makes my job so much easier. Please do.
All right.
I couldn't hear.
Van, I know this is hard for you to accept or even believe, but you're not imagining this. You're not going crazy. Your grandfather believed right down to the core of his being in protecting those who couldn't protect themselves.
You expect me to believe that my grandfather was a star-faring soldier?
I can prove it to you.
And how are you going to do that?
By taking you for a flight. Whenever you're ready, Van.
All right. First, can we just say I want to fly that ship? That looked awesome.
You can't fly anything. You're not allowed to. You're going to hurt yourself.
Probably, but so wow. What's the how did you come up with that video? Because I've never seen it where they actually made a video like that.
I have to admit, that's my favorite book commercial ever.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah, that was made by the audio publisher. So Terry and I went back and forth. They outsourced that to another studio, but he and I went back and forth with that studio directly on how it should play out. I had a very specific vision in mind for this trailer that I wanted to see made real. And of course, it's very expensive to make this stuff. I think that trailer costs like $10,000 to $15,000, and
William must love you.
It's just crazy, the cost of these videos. And so we were really lucky to get that made. But I was like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. And I had this image in my mind of going out in the barn, finding the ship, and then blasting off. And as you hit the stratosphere and you enter space, this music kicks in, and then it's just it accelerates into space. That whole visual had stuck with me, and so I pushed and pushed and pushed so we could get that made, and it actually happened. So it was a nice surprise.
So, Terry, would you let Jeff fly that plane, or would you be the one in the cockpit? Can you hear us, Terry?
I'm having technical issues. I can barely hear. Everything's in and out. I'm not sure.
Terry, would you let your partner fly the plane, or would you fly the plane?
Oh, I'd let him. Well, based on me being 18 years older and having really late middle-aged eyesight, I'd probably put Jeff in in the chair. So, and I had LASIK 22 years ago, but it didn't stick around. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll be the weapons officer, but Chaney's in the chair.
But that's only because he called himself old.
I called myself old. No,
I know you did.
Yeah, but that's also one of the reasons why our books work, is because there's a generational gap between us, in the sense that, you know, Jeff, we both love classic sci-fi and everything, but Jeff brings a wealth of knowledge about gaming that, you know, like my knowledge of gaming starts like with Pong and Atari, you know, and I look at gaming from somebody that came about, you know, I was a child in the 70s, and Jeff really cut his teeth on modern gaming. And so between the two of us, we have this Venn diagram where everything overlaps in this story, in particular in Backyard, very much.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, yeah, it's actually interesting. I didn't actually start reading science fiction until I was about 18, and but I wrote my first sci-fi story at 15. And in my household, there was much more of an emphasis on you know, Christian literature. So I read like Pilgrim's Progress, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, stuff like that. But man, when I didn't really enjoy reading. I enjoyed writing, but I didn't enjoy reading. And when I found sci-fi, a friend let me borrow the first Halo book, I think it was. Oh man, I was hooked.
You were so young.
Yeah. And I was really hooked after that, because he said, if you like this book, because I know you like the Halo video game, you should go read Ender's Game. And that was sort of like my first foray into sci-fi from a literary perspective. But before that, I played a lot of sci-fi video games and RPGs, like old JRPGs from the PlayStation, Super Nintendo era. So Xenogears, Lunar, games like that, Final Fantasy. And they sort of fused in like fantasy and sci-fi tropes. You know, but that's sort of more my background. And of course, like Star Trek, Star Wars, you know, TV shows and movies, different things. But I think I approached this career early on a little bit differently than, you know, most other sci-fi writers who were reading Heinlein and Asimov when they were kids. I didn't really have access to that stuff. So when Terry and I talk about The Messenger, I'm like, oh, you know, mecha Japanese anime like Gundam and, you know, Big O and stuff like that. And then he comes into it from, you know, books and series from the 1950s and 60s. And the same thing with Backyard Starship. It's like, you know, there's Flight of the Navigator, old movies like that from the 80s. And of course, both of us, our first story we ever wrote independently, obviously, of each other, and I think 15 years apart, was a story like Backyard, where the character finds a spaceship nearby, near their house. I think mine was the first story I wrote when I was 15. It was about me and my friends discovering a spaceship. So, you know, coming into it from different generations and even like just entirely different entertainment mediums, and yet discovering all of this crossover, you know, story-wise, I think that combination, that marriage of ideas was pretty essential in developing not just Backyard Starship, but The Messenger, Starcaster, everything that we've done together so far. And most of what I do, you know, independently of Terry, in fact, draws a lot of inspiration and influence from multiple kinds of mediums, not just books.
Okay, so
that's the same for me too, because of our, Jeff mentioned Gundam, and I knew a little bit about Gundam, but one thing I said, I brought Jet Jaguar and Ultraman were sort of my inspiration. So I was already, you know, I was 25 years in the past with my origin material, and I had no idea. And then Jeff showed me Gundam, and I was tangentially aware of it, but I thought,
Gundam's
oh
amazing.
wow, this is where it's where it went. And then I discovered Gurren Lagann and things like that, and I was like, oh, okay, this is how big it is and how roamy the universe is, and it's worked out really well.
Yeah. What were you going to say, JR?
I was going to ask you what the sales pitch or the elevator pitch for this series would be. If someone hasn't read it yet and they say, I want to give this a shot before I vote, what would you sell them as the pitch for this book?
relatable guy from the Midwest, somebody you'd probably know in real life if it isn't you, inherits a piece of property from his grandfather to discover that his grandfather had bigger secrets than he let on, and that all the stories that he was told as a child from his grandfather are actually all true. Stories of space princesses and intergalactic adventures.
So is this set in the modern timeline, or is this in the future enough where everyone knows about we're in space?
This is present day. So
Okay.
Picture it happening like right now.
Okay. So do you cover the origin of how his grandfather got the spaceship? Obviously no spoilers, but do you explain that?
We actually do. We have a duology, I guess you call it, of short stories called Backyard Starship Origins. 2 short stories that follow that tell the origin of his grandfather's adventures and how he became a peacemaker, which is what we call that job title in this universe of sort of a galactic cop, as it were, or a peacemaker.
Okay. Is this series is this going to be a long going series? Is this one that you've got a defined scope for? What can readers expect?
We currently have a plan for 25 novels and several short stories that will tell various origins for different characters. I think right now we've got 4 short stories written, 2 of which are released officially on Amazon together, and 2 more to come soon. We've also got the short stories narrated. So the first 2, which are about his grandfather, are narrated by Ray Porter. Those are available on our website, variantscifiaudio.com. And, I believe at least one or both of the other short stories are already on that website, some of which are free. And we have big plans for this universe, but the main series itself, you can expect 25 books.
Wow.
Okay, ambitious. So we will link to the short story collection and obviously book 1 in the show notes. So if this intrigues you, dear listener, you can either.
I gotta ask: did you originally set out to 25 books, or is it just you went? It could go, and then people loved it so much you're like, okay, let's actually figure out what we're going and where we're doing it?
So anytime that I work on a new series, this applies to every co-writer I work with, and including my own solo stuff, we have a larger we start with 1 arc, and for some authors that's 3 books. For others like Terry, they think more long-term, so it's like 6 to 9 books. And then we have a longer potential story that we develop ahead of time. So with this series in particular, going into it, I knew it would do well. I didn't expect it to do this well, but I assumed we would at least do 15 books. And so Terry and I worked out a plan for at least 15 with the potential of going to 25. And once the first book came out and we saw how hungry people were for content, how much they liked and connected with this character and the story, we decided to go ahead with the 25 novels and mapped out the general plot ahead of time. I did the same thing with Renegade Star. So that ended up being 16 books, and I developed a plan for 4 arcs. And that ended up working out pretty well. So ever since then, that's how I map series out. It's like I had the first 6 books, that first Search for Earth arc, which the 3 of us have talked about on a different show. And then once the first couple books came out, I saw that people were really interested in the story and that they were hoping for more. I was like, okay, now I can take this to the full scope that I had originally hoped for and planned for as a potential, but if people didn't connect with it, then I could have cut it short to just 6 books.
So you give yourself a natural ending. If it doesn't do as well, that doesn't leave the readers that liked it hanging. I like that. Sometimes You get series that if you really liked it, even if it didn't really sell, and they just sort of leave you with no ending, that's the worst.
Yeah, the reason I do it like this is because if I don't, if you just plan it book to book, or if you just say, okay, I'm going to do 3 books, that's going to be my plan going into this, and you don't plan ahead for more as a backup, then let's say that the first one comes out, it blows up on the charts, it becomes a massive success. You get to the end of it, you get to the end of those 3 books, or even just the end of the first book, and you haven't planned out the next thing. Now you're scrambling, trying to figure out where the story is going to go, even though you already gave it its natural conclusion. I see that happening all the time with writers, and you can tell that readers got to the end, the natural end, that had like real finality to it, and they were like, yeah, I feel satisfied with that, I'm done. And a lot of them walk away because you've tied up all the threads, you've tied up the entire story of that universe, and now it just feels tacked on and unnecessary. I mean, if you go, for example, and you read the Old Man's War series or the Ender's Game series, you can kind of tell, and I love both of those books, you can tell that at certain points the author just didn't expect to have to write more, especially the Old Man's War.
And it's hard for an author to just be like, okay, because it's time, it's done, it has its place. And I mean, it's hard as a fan. There's a couple series I'm like, but let's continue this, but I'm also like, it doesn't really fit.
So
Terry
I will
probably vouch for that. We've had that discussion about some classics.
So I will say one thing about variant. It is variant, right? I haven't been saying that wrong. It's not like Valiant.
No,
it's variant.
Yeah,
variant. Okay, I was right. One of the things I like about
Kennedy.
Hush, Doc, be nice, behave. One of the things I do like the way you write is you write escapism without like trying to force modern day issues at everybody. So, left, right, or center, everybody except for those heathens that put pineapple on pizza can enjoy your stories.
Hey, I put pineapple on my pizza and I love his stories.
But you leave the modern world to the normies and you just have fun. And I really like that. And the world needs more of that. So let me just say, address both of those both of those points. The pineapple on the pizza thing. I saw a meme the other day that said the only reason that you all hate pineapple on pizza is because the internet told you to, and you're just following them off. I do think there's some truth to that. It's the same thing with bacon. I see a lot of people are like, bacon is life, and you have like bacon soap now, and I'm like, man, I don't really like bacon that much. I don't think most people really do. I think it's just okay, and the hype culture around it and the internet really made that accelerate more than it should have. My wife loves pineapple on pizza.
I like your wife. Not only is she gorgeous, she has good taste.
I don't know. I've tried pineapple on pizza. It just wasn't for me. And I really do love bacon. Bacon is a unique food, and it hits all 7 of your unique taste receptors in your mouth, which is why people are so...
JR, you don't have to explain why bacon is glorious.
I'm just saying, I think there's reason there's hype. We could leave it at that. But Doc, all right, we get to start asking the fun dragon questions that you wrote up for us. So,
what was the other thing that you said? It was about variant, right? You asked about variant.
Yeah, I said you guys write like escapism that just is, it's just fun. You don't have to worry about modern issues. You can just have fun, unless it's modern issues that relate to the story.
So let me address that really quickly because I think that's an important distinction. When I got into this business and I decided to be a writer professionally, one of the things that this is before the divisive, like the hyper divisive politics that we've experienced in the last 6 to 12 years or whatever, just back when I was in my early 20s, I decided that when I became a writer, I would not insert my own beliefs and political leanings into my writing. And then after I became, after I got published and, I started putting books out, I started working with other writers, and I would always ask them, like, I really strive to be apolitical, and I don't care what politics you have. I don't care if you're right leaning or left leaning or a centrist or non-political at all. Just keep it so that anyone can read this and enjoy it. The whole philosophy behind that is that no matter who you are, what your background is, we all live very stressful lives. We all live busy lives. And at the end of the day, we're here to write escapism for anybody. If you like science fiction, whether you are a far left liberal or a far right conservative or somewhere in between, and you just want to read about, people in space having fun and going on adventures, like that's what we're here for. And, as someone who's ex-military and, spent a lot of time around conservatives, grew up in the South, and now lives in a big liberal city, I've got friends across the spectrum. And, at the end of the day, one commonality I've noticed is that, everybody has, for the most part, their own struggles, and they all have a reason to dive into entertainment. And when you make something like entertainment divisive and preachy and political, that's the fastest way to lose people. So that's just something I've always tried to avoid.
So Terry, was that your philosophy too? Do you normally tone that down on your own writing as well, or did you have to adjust to write with Jeff?
No, I didn't have to. Also, the other thing, Jeff and I had a really good conversation about the characters that we write. Like, I'll be real candid. Magnum PI is my favorite TV show, and it's very difficult not to like Thomas Sullivan Magnum because he embodies the qualities that I want to put in my characters because I admire those qualities: loyalty, friendship, honor, things like that. Now, when you take him, and like Jeff has strengths and I have strengths, and one of my tools that I bring with my kit is humorous dialogue. And there's a lot to be said for humor in science fiction. It is very often lacking, and there's nothing funnier than somebody being like a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, set kind of that man out of time trope. And like one of our most popular characters is a four-armed blue quasi-simian who hates wearing pants and loves cheese, and she loves complaining all the time, and her hilarity wouldn't be possible if I did some kind of a strident trope with her. And I think that liking these characters that you can admire makes it easier for me to write characters who are, I don't know if they're apolitical, because they certainly take a stand in the sense that they're honorable, and they're good friends. So they certainly embody things that I have enjoyed or looked up to my entire life. And I don't think that that's going to change. And our success certainly seems to reflect that we've struck a note with a broad audience.
I would concur. All right, Doc, you get to move us right along. We're going to pretend you didn't fall asleep, and you get to ask the next question.
Asleep.
I mean, that's what you want us to think, right?
You know what? Be nice to me, because in next month, when I've slept, it's going to be on like Donkey Kong for you, and you're going to wonder what happened.
Possibly. All right. I'll be nice.
So, what was your first reaction in hearing that you guys were nominated, and how will your friends and family keep you grounded in case you get a swole head?
May I address this before Jeff says anything? Because this is a cultural issue.
Okay.
This goes back. So I have a family and children, and Jeff texted me at 3:38 a.m. my time to let me know. And I'll let Jeff talk about how exciting everything was, but part of the reason our partnership works is because neither of us necessarily have a concept of time, even though he's out in Vegas and I'm near Nashville and we have 2 hours difference. But I got notified by Jeff at 3:30. I looked at the timestamp. 3:38 a.m. was when the information dropped.
Okay. So sleep. Who needs sleep?
Terry obviously doesn't.
Terry's a fiend, man. That guy gets like 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night. I don't know how he does
I know.
it.
I've seen him at cons, and it's exhausting.
There's definitely something messed up in his head. I don't really.
I know, but he's great the way he is. So you found out? Did you scream? Did you wake up your child?
Well, I don't have a child.
No. When Terry got the message, did he scream?
Oh no, I didn't yell. I only yell during the daytime. That's a little tradition. But no, Jeff, I actually haven't had a conversation with Jeff yet about. We've been so busy, I haven't gotten to talk to We talk every other day, but we haven't had a conversation about how he felt initially. So this is news to me.
So how did you react when you got the message, Jeff?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Well, I was honestly pretty surprised because we actually submitted Backyard for best sci-fi book, not best military sci-fi book. So I don't know how that happened. Either
your fans went astray.
Yeah, I guess it was either that or somebody behind the scenes decided we fit better in that category. I don't know.
I do know, because having talked with some of the people who do some of the categorizing, what they will do sometimes is if fans kind of scatter around because they didn't get the memo that you're pushing it for best sci-fi, they may nominate it more in one category. So what they'll do is they'll go, okay, well, it got kind of nominated in 2, but the majority of it got nominated in this category. So let's move everything here.
Oh, gotcha.
Just so that, because, and why does Dragon Con do this? Because the Dragon Con team understands that fandom is like hurting ADHD hyperactive cats.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That makes sense. I can definitely appreciate that. I assumed something like that was happening because when I pushed it, like I said, we pushed it for the other one, but it makes sense.
Your fans just didn't get the memo.
Yeah. I'm super thankful for it though. Obviously, just to get the nomination is incredible. This is the second year that we've had something up for this specific award for military sci-fi. Last year was Sentenced to War. So to have it 2 years in a row is incredible. Hopefully we'll win this time, but there is some stiff competition, even more so than last year. So we'll have to keep our fingers crossed. We are against, guys like David Weber. I forget the other. There's like 2 other.
I know Weber wins very well.
Yeah. So when you're up against these guys that have been doing this for decades and they have that name recognition, it is very difficult. Not to mention the fact that they are published by billion-dollar companies with a lot of, obviously a lot of reach and money behind them. But we're trying our best and we're trying to get the word out. And, I think we stand a decent chance. If we can win, I'm gonna buy myself a steak dinner. A very expensive steak dinner.
Terry, you can have whatever your wife lets you have.
I do all the cooking, so it's down to me.
Well, that's at least encouraging for you. So, what do you think this nominated? Well, you've been nominated before. Terry, is this your first nomination?
It's my first. Yeah.
Okay. So, what does this mean to you as an author to be nominated like this?
I mean, it's confirmation. Well, first of all, from a cultural standpoint, Dragon Con is to me, because I know this might sound silly, but Anne McCaffrey. If Anne McCaffrey's books don't exist, we're not having this conversation, because she made me want to be a writer, and she more or less, I don't know, transported me from the age of 6 on. So Anne McCaffrey, dragons, been a theme of my life for 45 years or 47 years. And then Dragon Con is, the people's convention, in the sense that it celebrates so many things. Like I go to Dragon Con because I want to see things I haven't seen before. Like I'm like, wow, I'm judging a cosplay thing this year and stuff like that. So this is the fans talking back to us, which means everything to me, because Jeff and I have a real powerful sense of fan service, in that I consider myself absolutely dipped and lucky to do what I do for a living. I love this. I mean, I love it. I burn for it. I want it. And I used to be a roofer. So believe me, I know what it's like to work hard. I know what this is like to feel this kind of success. And this is the pinnacle, the absolute pinnacle for me.
Yeah, I've done the roofing thing too. It sucks, especially in the hot heat of the South. I would not recommend 0 stars. That's how I paid for college. So I feel you, sir. This definitely, the writer's game definitely beats climbing on those roofs. So Have you guys ever attended the Dragon Con?
Only once last year. I won't be there this year, but Terry will be.
Okay. So, what is it?
Can I say this one? Because this is really cool. So, Terry is going to be our judge for Page to Stage, and he's in the open, which is probably a really good thing. But Chaney has somebody cosplaying one of his characters in our invitational division.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's right.
I just had to point that out because I'm really psyched about both. So.
Yeah, my art director and I co-wrote a series a while back called Soul Arbiter, which is more of a cyberpunk military space opera series, and very heavy Blade Runner influence. So I was a bit surprised when that one came up as a potential cosplay, but the artist who was also the writer was over the moon thrilled about it. So he was able to design some really cool costumes based on the books.
Oh yeah. And by the way, the guy who's doing it, he happens to be a vet as well. He's an Army Special Forces NCO.
Oh, super cool.
So yeah, no, it's kind of how some of that works, but we're going to get back to our regularly scheduled questions. So
go ahead, Doc.
What are you guys most excited about with the convention? Obviously, Chaney's just going to say what he's missing out on the most.
Well, I think for both of us, it's definitely, I mean, I don't want to speak for Terry, but presumably the award. I mean, that's, it's unexpected for me, especially twice in a row. But yeah, you don't really get, because we're independently published, you don't really get nominated that often for these, types of awards. I think we've gotten a couple Audie Award nominations, but in terms of just the book itself, this is the second time, and I've only ever been nominated at the Dragons. So when it happens, it's rare, but it's very exciting.
Okay. What about you, Terry?
This is confirmation that we're telling great stories. The award, I want to be at I love Dragon Con. I love everything about it. It was almost sensory overload the first time I went, but the peak will be the awards this year for the simple fact that I think it confirms that Jeff and I work hard and listen to people and try and tell the absolute best story that we can. And we're bringing about 5 decades of sci-fi and fantasy passion to this narrative. And I checked this morning, Backyard Starship, the series has 37,000 reviews. And if you'd have told me a few years ago that I would write something and Jeff, that the two of us would collaborate to create something that was that popular, I would have thought it was a fever dream. And now we get to be up against people that I professionally admire and their books are on my shelf. So it's absolutely, the award is the highlight for me.
So what panels, since you are attending, Terry, what panels are you most excited to participate in?
I can tell you the first one. First of all, they're all really good, but I'm on the Pern panel this year. And for me, who's been an Anne McCaffrey fan since I was in 2nd grade, this is just, it's surreal. I mean, it's just surreal to get to sit and talk about something that is arguably one of the long-standing relationships in my life is with Anne's work. So the Pern panel for me is the one that I'm looking forward to them all because they're all curated so beautifully. But that one is, in a weird way, the culmination of my fandom as an adult.
So, Jeff, since you're not going to be there, so this is hypothetical for you, but if you were able to go, is there any kind of topic you'd like to sit on a panel as a guest for?
Oh, man. Yeah, definitely. Just to be able to talk about the future of the publishing industry would be nice. The future of sci-fi specifically. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe sci-fi young adult. I have a lot to say about that. But yeah, I mean, I would feel really honored to be able to sit and just talk about the genre itself, and where I think it's going to go in the future.
Now that's an idea for a fireside chat, Doc. Scribble that down.
JR, you need to read your ASL better.
All right.
Okay.
Ask the next question before I cry into my blanket.
You'll survive. Don't worry, JR. One day you too can be an author. Sorry, wait, what?
Oh, ouch. That hurt.
So what do you think of the categories? Do you think they should expand the categories? Where do you see them adding in? JR has his own opinion. It's wrong.
Space opera category.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, can you list off the book categories real quick for me?
So for the book categories,
you got sci-fi novel, fantasy novel, YA/middle grades, military, SF or fantasy novel, alternate history novel, media tie-in novel, horror novel, graphic novel, comic book. Yeah. I really think we should have a anthology series.
Yeah, that would be good. I think best short form fiction would be good. So like a short story.
I just think it would be easier to campaign for an entire anthology than one short story. But that could be because I don't always get all the short stories read.
Yeah, I mean, about once a year or so, there's always like one just published on its own individual short story that really takes off and does surprisingly well with people. So maybe there's not enough to justify an entire category, but I do think an anthology or even a short story, some kind of category that caters to that, like short fiction, would be really interesting. Space opera, when you guys interviewed me last year with Brazy, I said this, I really think we need a distinction for space opera right next to military sci-fi, but I don't see it happening anytime soon because I think that they view, like, I think that the Dragon Awards views the general sci-fi category as maybe that, but I mean, then you also have like techno thrillers and, modern
some of it is so much
sci-fi.
of space opera happens to be military, like Terry Mixon's and stuff like that. So it's definitely space opera, or Honor Harrington, very space opera, but there is such a strong mil SF emphasis.
Right. I think that is largely true. However, Backyard Starship isn't really that I mean, it is somewhat military sci-fi, but it's not. I think it would classify better as space opera. Same thing with like Renegade Star, various series like that, The Fifth Column, Soul Arbiter. But there is some crossover, so I can see why they haven't done it. And I don't really expect them to ever get to that point. I do think they need a lit RPG category.
Every lit RPG person who's ever heard it is now voting for you just because you said that.
I would love to see that. I think lit RPG, I've written some lit RPG. We actually have a series called King's League. Book 4 comes out in a couple of weeks.
Well, I keep telling everybody Jay Boyce should be considered the mother of lit RPG.
Alron Khan might have something to say about
that. That's his problem.
Yeah.
But she's done a tremendous job of making people honestly care about lit RPG.
Oh yeah.
If that makes any sense.
There's a couple of people like that who have really gone a long way to progress that genre, including Dakota Kraut and several more. Shirtaloon is now a big name in that, although he's writing more progression fantasy. Anyway, not to derail this conversation too much, but yeah, lit RPG, 100%. It's unique enough. I think it needs its own category.
Well, it does have its own code according to the Library of Congress. No.
There you go.
Nice. So I would say
I might know a few things about it. I've been held captive.
I was going to say, one of the things about lit RPG is, I mean, if you have to give it some credit because it's actually a 40-year-old genre in the sense that Joel Rosenberg's Guardians of the Flame back in the mid 80s really kicked it off. Like for me, when I talk about origin points for that genre, and I love lit RPG, D&D, I cut my teeth playing D&D from 80 on. And one of the things that, like when Jeff introduced me to modern lit RPG, I was like, oh, I've seen this before. And it was called Joel Rosenberg, and it was the Guardians of the Flame, and I loved it. And I think that there's certainly enough history there that it should have some kind of recognition of its own.
So in addition to the short fiction, which I advocate for every year, because I love short stories, that's where I started reading the Reader's Digest synopsises of stories that were basically just short stories as a kid. I also think they something to recognize the cover art, because oh my goodness, the cover art that's coming out these days keeps getting better and better. I think the quality of the book art, I mean, those artists deserve some credit too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
And I know this isn't part of the question. There is one thing that I think I might change about the voting procedure, if you guys are interested.
Sure.
Just as a casual observation, I don't think most people who vote have read all of the things, up for vote, even one thing in some of the categories. So they just randomly select stuff, which might skew the voting. So it might be better in the future. I mean, I don't know how much control Cisca has over this, but it might be better to just give an option to just not vote on a certain category.
I actually had categories I didn't vote in because I hadn't read any of them, so I just didn't click any button. So you can already do that.
Yeah. See, I think I didn't know that. I think that making that more obvious in the voting might actually, help things along. Because when I send this to people, they send me back the ballot sheet, and they're like, "I haven't read anything but yours." I'm like, "Oh my god."
Fair. That would be more just a messaging rather than a functionality thing.
Yeah,
so obviously, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that's probably what it is.
So obviously you would vote for your own books because that's the smart thing to do, and you two are smart individuals. But what other books, games, or properties on the list this year were you particularly taken by?
Oof, man, let me look up the ballot.
I have two of them.
Okay, Terry.
Two of them that are really easy. Number one, Dune, easy peasy. Dune.
Okay.
Denis Villeneuve, his version, and I'm a Jodorowsky snob a little bit. That's my history goes to Dune. I really was transported by it. Thought it was absolutely superb, visual, gave me everything that I wanted from the story. And the other thing is, I'm a defender of and one of the reasons why I know what The Expanse is, but the concept of blending hard sci-fi with a political thriller and making it, there's not a lot of hand wavium, and you've got a lot of people that feel very three-dimensional to me there. And also, I can't act, but I appreciate they cast great actors right down the line, even in small roles on that show. And I just remember watching it and thinking, okay, this is attention to detail that everybody else could learn from. So those two for me absolutely jump out.
Okay. And what about you, Chaney? Have you had a chance to scan the list real quick?
Yeah, I would say Immortal X-Men is pretty good. It's coming off the back of House of X and Sword of X and all that stuff. Really good X-Men run by Grant Morrison. And I think that's who wrote it. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure it's Grant Morrison. But very, very good. Really rebooted. Well, not rebooted, but reimagined a lot of the X-Men lore and modernized it with Krakoa, the Island of Krakoa, and anything like that. I don't know how many people that listen to this actually read X-Men, but it's gotten pretty good. Saga by Brian K. Vaughan. For those who don't know who that is, Brian K. Vaughan is the guy who wrote Y: The Last Man, an exceptional graphic novel about the last man on Earth, and his monkey Ampersand, who is also a male. The two of them are the last two males of any species left alive on the planet. So it's just a planet full of women and female animals. Very cool story, but that's what propelled him to fame. And now he's got Saga, which is a sci-fi space opera series that starts off as like a Romeo and Juliet story between two aliens, a man and a woman of different species. One is a prisoner and one is a guard in this prison, and they fall in love. The girl gets pregnant and they go on the run. And the baby basically almost becomes like a space Jesus type figure. But both sides are after them. Very cool story. My wife read it. She cried. Very cool. I highly recommend that. As for best TV show, I mean, Strange New Worlds is really good. It really brings us back to old school Star Trek. Finally, I was not a fan of Picard. Was not a fan of Discovery, but I really like Strange New Worlds. Pike is a great captain. The actor that plays him is really spot on. The Boys is fantastic. Stranger Things, still pretty good. Probably the best season since season 1. Best science fiction movie, Dune by far wins that. I don't think anyone else stands a chance. If Spider-Man wins, it's just nostalgia. I mean, it's a really good movie, but it's just Dune is for me the best thing this year. Science fiction and fantasy video games, Elden Ring probably takes that. That's like a critical darling right now. And then, I think that's probably that's probably everything I feel comfortable personally with stating my opinion on.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. And so, Terry, since you did mention Dune, we got peer pressured by Kevin J. Anderson to doing our next book review as of Dune. So we're going to rope you into that because reasons. You just volunteered yourself. But all right, so if you guys are so lucky as to win this award this year, what are your plans to celebrate your success?
I've got plans, Chaney.
So you're asking if we win the award, how are we going to celebrate?
Yeah, absolutely. Steak dinner, going to Disney World. I don't know. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I mean, people ask me this kind of thing all the time with book releases and stuff, and I'm just like, I'm gonna go write some more. No, I'll probably go out for dinner somewhere with my wife and get like a nice dinner, and then come back home and go to work. That's at the end of the day, that's what I enjoy doing. So, what about you, Terry?
I'm getting a medium strawberry frosty, and I'm not using a coupon, paying full price.
Sorry.
So
there you go. That's the Terry we know.
And then I'm going to go back and write 2 awesome chapters. That's how it's going to go.
While you're high on frosty sugar?
Oh yeah, absolutely. While I'm riding that sugar high. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
that is the best answer I think we've ever gotten, and we've been doing these Dragon Award interviews for 3 years now. I like it.
Yeah, you should hear Terry when I tell him like how the book is ranking, like a new release or something. He's like, "Oh, we hit the top 100 in the store." He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go get me a Happy Meal." I'm gonna go get me a McDonald's meal, and this time I'm gonna extra size the fries or supersize the fries. He just says some dumb shit like that.
That is so Terry. He is so down to earth.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, what motivates us, it's like that stuff's awesome, and it just motivates us to just do more work, because when you're selling really well and people are messaging you and you're up for an award or you win an award, hopefully, at the end of the day, it's just like, man, I want to give these people more content. I want to do even better with the next one. And I think that makes you want to sit down, put your butt in the chair and work. Like this, we could have done anything in life, and we chose to just make up stories and hope that people like them enough to pay us. So as long as that's true, we'll keep doing it.
So Terry, since you're not using the coupon, if you win, can I have it?
Actually, I'd love to do that, but I can't because my birthday is Monday, and I've got plans for that coupon, just not for the award. So if Jeff and I win this award, this is my birthday. This is my 54th birthday present to myself to write, to be a part of Backyard Starship. So I'm tragically for you, I'm going to have that coupon, but I'll ask around and see what I can do, and I'll get back to you.
Because I might have to change my vote now. Jeez.
You already voted. Whatevers.
All right, Doc, next question is yours while I cry into my beer.
Here, shut up. Where are you going to put the award?
Right behind my desk on the bookshelf.
We don't get 2?
Well, actually, you have to arm wrestle him on stage to see who gets to take the award home.
No,
there can be only one.
Where he's going, by default, he gets to keep it.
I confirmed that you both get one because Jason Onspach won 1 year, and he's another co-writer. So I was like, oh, if we win, do we both get one? And he was like, oh yeah, they'll mail it to whoever's not there or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's good.
Yes, but Terry gets it first.
Terry gets it first. He gets to go on stage and congratulate himself. So I'm very excited. For
I wrote my speech on the back of a CVS receipt, so it's.
Oh, that's gonna be a long one.
No, I know if we win this, I know where it's going. I've got a signed Michael Whalen and a signed Boris Vallejo print, and it's going to go right in between the two.
Oh, I'm jealous of that Whalen. That's pretty cool.
It's gorgeous, awesome. Man. Yeah.
That is awesome. Are you going to thank the little people in your speech?
No, just the small.
That wasn't leading at all.
You got to do one of those faux Academy Award speeches until they get the hook thing and pull you off stage. Wait, do they do that, Doc?
We do it at the Masquerade and the Page to Stage. It's Stormtroopers at the Masquerade and a Deadpool at the Page to Stage.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
So we've been at this for a little bit, and I know Chaney has some obligations because apparently a real life is a thing. I don't know what that's about, Terry, but one day we'll figure it out. So Chaney, can you tell listeners and viewers how they could find you on the Wild Interwebs? And as usual, it will be in the show notes.
Yeah, you can join our ever-growing group, Jay and Chaney's Renegade Readers. We have 13,000 members now in there, and it is a very active group with a lot of awesome sci-fi readers from all walks of life. One of the few non-toxic communities, places to discuss stuff on social media, and that's probably the best place to interact with us. Terry is in there every day talking to people. You can also find me specifically on jandchaney.com. You can sign up for the newsletter and then reply or email me directly. If you want, you can email me at jandchaney@jandchaney.com. I respond to every email I get, unless you're a douche, then I don't. But if you just email me, if you have questions and stuff, I'll email you right back. And yeah, so those are the three ways.
All right. What about you, Terry? How can listeners find you on the wild internet?
Sure. Come join us on Jay and Chaney's Renegade Readers. That's like I'm in there, as Jeff mentioned, every day. I love talking to everybody. I'm terrymaggert.com. And you can email me at terry@terrymaggert.com because like Jeff, I love having conversations about fandom because, this is my 5th decade here, 6th decade here, and I love so many different things. So I try to respond to everything. And to quote my grandfather, never make it hard for people to find you. So terrymaggert.com.
It's awesome advice, and we follow it ourselves. So you could find us on Twitter at twitter.com/SF_fantasy_show, Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy_show. You can email the show at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. All hate mail will go to Cisca at blastersandbladespodcast.com. You can join us on Facebook where all the shenanigans happen. Well, I mean, you're used to it. People at DragonCon call you all kinds of names.
They do.
Normally, so you can
Lord and Master. No, I'm kidding.
Well, we'll just move on from there before the delusion sets. You can find us on Facebook where all the shenanigans happen at facebook.com/groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, /groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast. You can find our website at anchor.fm/Blasters Tech and Tech Blades. Again, anchor.fm/Blasters-and-Blades, where for as little as 99 cents a month, you can help keep the lights on. Coming soon to a website near you, we also own the domain blastersandbladespodcast.com. Doc was kind enough to purchase it for the show, so whenever she sleeps again after DragonCon, so maybe January, she'll get to trying to make that website happen for us, and we appreciate that. And you can also support the show more directly at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it is for the podcast, and I will keep my co-hosts, Doc Cisca and Nick Garber, duly caffeinated. They will drink until their liver explodes. Wait, does it go to the liver when it's caffeine? I don't know. I'm not a doctor. Anyway, bring us home, Doc.
Thank you for spending
we broke your brain.
Time with us. Do not forget to vote. For Nick Garber, what? You're dumb.
What, Doc? Did you?
For Nick Garber, the absentee, and JR, the addle-brained, I'm Cisca. This was a Blasters and Plays podcast. We'll be back next time. Same place, same great channel. Indulging our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. And do not forget to vote on the Dragon Award or come see me at DragonCon because we'll have a Blasters and Blades panel.
All right. Outstanding. Go vote, people. And